Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. I have a great honor to be presenting our perspective and experience in our study about the assessment of Zakat institution health or soundness level. Today's presentation consists of 4 parts, including first, introduction, second, previous studies, third, methodology, and fourth, the indicators of soundness index of Zakat institution. First, introduction. The potential for Zakat in Indonesia in 2020 is huge. Nevertheless, the realization of Zakat infak sodaqah collection is relatively lower than the donated this Zakat infak sodaqah by the community to an official institution. The study stated that the estimated Zakat infak sodaqah collection donated by the public to the non-Zakat institution for the past 2 years has increased. The Zakat infak sodaqah collection by the non-Zakat institution in 2019 increased by 5.1% in 2020. This slide shows that the reason for the society donating their zakat to the unofficial institution, this data empowers zakat institution to evaluate their performance, especially related to the accountability of zakat management. Accountability in managing zakat is one of the essential dimensions in measuring the credibility and accountability of finance in zakat institution. In order to evaluate zakat management, Puskesmas has published several indexes and guidelines studies as the assessment of tool of zakat management. However, the studies mentioned before are still partial, as no study combine and integrates the index to measure the soundness level of zakat institution. The measurement of the soundness index currently is only available in profit institution, such as in financial institution like bank or non-bank. Therefore, zakat institution need an integrated index to measure financial performance and management performance. It can be accommodated by the soundness index for zakat institution and used as an evaluation tool and rating level for zakat institution. The soundness level can be utilized as evaluation data to formulate a strategy that can spur the performance of zakat institutions. Furthermore, the zakat institution ideally could manage its finances and risk management. Based on this description, it is necessary to develop an instrument to assess the soundness level of zakat institution. In the next slide, I will present previous studies regarding the soundness level index in Sharia industries that will be divided into the soundness index of Islamic finance and zakat institution performance assessment index. First, the soundness index of Islamic finance, it consists of 4 health level, which are the Saria bank health level and the Saria insurance health level. And in the next slide, we will discuss the third and the fourth index. The first index is the Sharia bank health level, which has 4 indicators based on the OJK regulation, which are risk, profile, good corporate governance, earnings, and capital. While Saria insurance health level also has 4 indicators, but with different type of indicators. Third, Sharia cooperative health level, according to the regulation by the Deputy for Supervision of the Ministry of Cooperative Small and Medium Enterprises, the Islamic cooperative soundness assessment are carried out on the 8 aspects. And for BPRS, that is the Rural Islamic Bank, the soundness of assessment for Islamic Rural Bank refer to the Financial Services Authority Circular Letter number 20H OJK 2019. The assessment of the soundness level of Islamic World Bank include in 5 aspects. The next soundness level index in Sharia industries in Zakat Institution Performance Assessment Index. No regulation regulates the health assessment of non-profit institution, especially Zakat institution. It's just that there are only a few studies of the Basnas Puskas which are used as Zakat organization assessment tools from financial and non-financial slide, including first, finance ratio of Zakat management organization. According to the finance ratio of Zakat management organization, which was published by Puskas Basnas, there are 5 types of ratio to measure the financial performance of Zakat institution, as we can see on the slide. Second, the Saria compliance index of Zakat institution by Puskas Basnas identify and measure the level of Sharia compliance of Zakat institution. Third, transparency index. It aims to measure the overall level of transparency by analyzing 3 essential aspects. These 3 dimensions are further elaborated to 9 variables and 18 indicators relevant to assessing transparency practices in Zakat institution. The fourth Zakat Institution Performance Assessment Index is the National Index 2.0 that measures the macro and micro dimension of management of Zakat. And the fifth index is Risk Management, which has 405 total risks. Next, I will explain the methodology that used in this study. The research used a mixed method, which is combination of qualitative and quantitative approaches. 3 stages have been used in order to create the soundness level index, which are: first is the study, second focus group discussion, and third the calculation models. Stage first and second were observed using qualitative methods. On the other hand, stage 3 was analyzed using quantitative methods. The content analysis and interactive model analysis are utilized in the paper. Content analysis in this study is utilized to identify and examine the component of the soundness index from various literature sources. Next, we will talk about the indicators of soundness index of Zakat institutions. The factor of categorization of soundness level Zakat institution has 2 factors. First, the finance factor has 7 indicators and 35 variables based on the financial ratio. The second factor is non-financial factor, which consists of 3 indicators and 16 variables. It is according to the Sharia Compliance Index, Transparency Index, National Zakat Index, Risk Management, and per Basnas. This is the Basnas own regulation. Based on the analysis ranging from a desk study and focus group discussion, the soundness level assessment is conducted by quantitative and qualitative approaches to financial factors and management factors. The quantitative approach is used to assess financial factors consisting of activity, operational, liquidity, and growth, where all the variables mentioned above are in the form of financial ratio. On the other hand, the qualitative approach is employed to assess management factor consisting of 3 variables, which are general management, risk management, and Sharia compliance. We start to the first factor, finance factors. The first component of the finance factor is activity. Activities assessment to measure the performance of Zakat institution is analyzed on 3 main ratio as follow: allocation to collection ratio or ACR, turnover ratio, and distribution ratio. We will elaborate activity components in the next section. The activity ratio is an assessment to measure the company's effectiveness using its asset. For Zakat institution, The activity assessment aims to measure the effectiveness distribution of zakat infak sodaqah funds that should be channeled by effectively to mustahiq. It is analyzed on three main ratios. First is allocation to collective ratio, second, zakat turnover ratio, and third, disbursement ratio. The first main ratio of activity ratio is allocation to collection ratio. It is used to calculate the ability of zakat institution to distribute zakat funds by dividing total payments by total collection. There are 6 sub-ratio. In this slide, there are first, gross allocation ratio, second, the gross allocation ratio non-amil. And in the next slide is next, net allocation ratio, zakat allocation ratio, net allocation ratio non-amil, zakat allocation ratio non-amil. Infak sodaqah allocation ratio, zakat allocation ratio, in general, all the enumerator of sub-ratio is divided by the total collection with adjustment according to the sub-ratio. The second main ratio of activity ratio is the turnover ratio. The turnover ratio is a fund turnover ratio that describes the total funds distributed to the total average receipt of funds. In the Zakat core principle document, the prominence in distributing funds is a performance assessment indicator for zakat institutions. In other words, the faster the distribution of funds, the better the performance of the zakat institution. There are also 6 sub-ratio. In this slide, there are first, zakat turnover ratio, second, average of days zakat outstanding. And in the next slide is infak sodaqah turnover ratio, average of day infak sodaqah outstanding, zakat infak sodaqah turnover ratio, and the last sub-ratio is average of days zakat infak sodaqah outstanding. The third main ratio of activity ratio is the disbursement ratio. This ratio is utilized to see the proportion of distribution receivable, down payment for activities, and assets under management to the total distribution of funds. After we discuss the first component of the finance factor, we will then discuss the second component of the finance factor named as an operational component. The operational assessment used to measure the efficiency of the operational cost of zakat institution over the fundraising. The calculation of the operation ratio is measured by 2 sub-ratios. There are the efficiency ratio and the amil fund ratio. We will discuss operational component in the next section. The operational assessment is intended to measure how much efficiency the zakat institution operational costs are on the funds that have been raised. The more efficient the zakat measurement organization in collecting, the better the governance of the zakat institution. The first sub-ratio of the operational component is the efficiency ratio. This ratio is used to measure how efficient zakat institution operation are with the respect to collection costs, operational costs, and HR costs. This is the detail of the formula. Next slide, please. The first sub-ratio of the operational ratio is the amil fund ratio. It is used to measure how much funds have been collected that are allocated to amil funds. Amil funds are intended for the operational cost of zakat management organization. This is the detail of the formula. Every sub-ratio is divided by collection for fund minus collection sharing on the placement of funds. After we discuss the second component of the finance factor, then we discuss the third component of the finance factor known as liquidity components. The calculation of liquidity ratio is measured by 3 sub-ratios. There are current ratio, quick ratio, and cash ratio. We will elaborate on liquidity components in the next section. Liquidity ratio can be defined as a ratio that shows the company's capability to cover its short-term liabilities. It has three sub-ratios that we will discuss later. The first sub-ratio in the current ratio, it is used to measure the ability of the Zakat institution to meet its short-term obligation that will mature using the total current asset. The second sub-ratio is quick ratio. It is the company's ability to pay its short-term obligation by using more liquid asset. The most liquid asset is in Zakat management organization consists of cash and cash equivalents, distribution receivable, and advances for activities. And the last is the cash ratio that is used to measure how much cash and cash equivalent are available to pay short-term obligation. Now, we will discuss the last component of financial factor, the growth component. The growth component has three main ratios that we will elaborate on the next section. A growth ratio is a ratio that shows the percentage growth over time. Growth ratio is usually used in various things such as companies to calculate the growth of its performance. It has three main ratios. The first is the growth of collection. This ratio aims to measure how big the growth of Zakat infaq fund collection is from the previous years. Consists of three derived ratios, namely the growth of Zakat collection, growth of infaq, divided arms collection, and growth of Zakat infaq sodaka collection, with each ratio which of 0.33. The second one is the growth of allocation fund that will reflect the efficiency of Zakat institution in distributing the collected funds. The third one is operating expense growth ratio that reflect the growth in costs used for Zakat institution operation this year compared to the previous year. The second factor of the Soundness index for Zakat institution is management factors. It is measured with three variables. Management assessment is intended to evaluate the managerial ability of Zakat institution in managing their operation, risk management and Sharia compliance, and statutory provision compliance. This qualitative utilize a Likert scale of 1 to 5 on three variables: general management, risk management, and Sharia compliance. These are the three components of management factor that will be discussed in the next section. We will elaborate on management factor in the next section. The first component uses 7 indicators to assess the management of the Zakat institution. The indicator use qualitative Likert scale calculation methods. The following indicators indicate these assessments are vision and mission, strategic plan, annual budget plan, management understanding of vision and mission, strategic plan, and annual budget plan. Structure organization, standard operating procedure, duties, and responsibilities of leaders, and reporting. This is all 7 indicator general management. Next, we will talk about the risk management component. In this study, the risk management assessment utilize 5 risk dimensions, and you also can see the likelihood management scale in the slide. The first risk dimension is strategic risk. It is divided into 3 indicators as we can see in the slide. These 3 indicators will be measured by likelihood scale just like in the previous slide. The likelihood scale is also used in the 20 indicator of operational risk dimension. In this slide, we show you the first 10 indicators. And in this slide, you can see the rest of indicators of operational risk that also be measured by likelihood scale. The third dimension is an educational risk that has 4 indicators related to the socialization and education of Zakat in society. This indicator also measured by likelihood scale. Reporting risk is divided into 5 indicators that are related to how good the financial and management report of Zakat institution is. The last dimension of the risk management component is compliant risk indicator that consists of quality of the manager and institution in overcome the risk. Next, we will talk about the Saria compliance components. Saria compliance is very important in the Zakat institution. Therefore, in this study, to assess Saria compliance, the following 3 dimensions are analyzed. First, Saria regulation. Second, Saria supervision. And third, the code of ethics. These 3 dimensions will be measured also by likelihood scale just like the previous dimension. Sharia regulation dimension only one indicator. Zakat institution have a Sharia regulation, for example, standard operational procedure or decree. The second dimension has 3 indicators related to the supervisory board, SOP, and Sharia supervision report. The last dimension is the code of ethics, which has 2 indicators. First, Zakat institution have a code of ethics for Amil Zakat and have an institutional organ that is responsible for enforcing the Amil Zakat code of ethics. After we discuss the factors, components, and indicator of the Soundness Index of Zakat institution, lastly, we will discuss the assessment procedure in has 4 stages. First, we assessing financial ratio and non-financial Likert scale. Second, we ranking each component of activity, operation, liquidity, growth, and management. In the third stage, we have to determine the rating of financial and non-financial factors. In the last stage, we have to determine the composite ranking of the Zakat institution health level. All states will give us the score of soundness level of Zakat institution from composite index. With this score, we can evaluate the performance of Zakat institution and have a ranking of Zakat institution in Indonesia. So we can mapping the management of Zakat institution in Indonesia and take a good policy to overcome the problems of Zakat institution. That is all our presentation. Hope you get the new insight about our proposed model of soundness level of Zakat institution. We are open to any discussion and feedback for this soundness level. Thank you very much. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.